So in my last video, this wasn't addressed in the comments, but someone close to me kind of either asked or was curious or just didn't get why whenever I make a video, I tend to have stuff like these comic books, this backpack, or pretty much anything that might be tangentially related to the main focus of my videos. And basically, it's just set dressing, because otherwise you'd be staring at a table in my kitchen, and sometimes I'll talk about it as like a bonus to try to tie it about what I know about it to try to tie into the main feature of a video, or it's just to show that I make these videos. I talk about stuff I like, and it just sort of gives it the feel that you're chatting with someone who probably who collects this because they have a passion for it. And with that, I'm going to do another toy video. We have over here are some very recent Batman figures of the dynamic duo Batman and Robin. Now, these are made by, well, as you can see down there, I have my reasons for not name dropping the company, but you know who you are. No hard feelings. But a funny story about I think first I want to go over a brief history of Batman toys. Now, the character, if you don't know, first appeared 80 years ago as of this year in 1939, and from what I've gathered, the quick research I did for this video, aside maybe a few, like, there's evidence of a Superman toy that was a mail-away offer in the 1950s that was made of die-cast metal, and that was distributed through Kellogg's. But I don't think there was much Batman merchandise, at least until the Adam West show premiered in 1966. And even then, I think most of it is die-cast models of the Batmobile with maybe little figures that you could stick inside, but mostly they're just like, they're stuck permanently in a sitting position, so you can't, they're not really action figures, because action figures, well, the modern action figure originated around 1961 with the release of G.I. Joe, but there wasn't really a variety beyond him, so to speak, until roughly the 1970s when a company called Mego, from what I understand, they made some of the first closer to these figures. They were roughly 6 inches. I don't have or can't put up any photos, but imagine a figure like these, about this tall, with a mix of molded plastic and fabric clothes. It was kind of a bridge between the G.I. Joe fabric clothing that can be swapped out or adjusted in various ways, and the modern solid plastic on action figures that would come out later, such as Kenner Star Wars, and the second company known for making Batman toys was, in fact, Kenner in '84. They didn't specifically make Batman figures. They made pretty much a line of the Justice League / Super Friends as a tie-in to the cartoon that was out at the time. After them, in 1989, to tie into the Tim Burton film, which, as you can see back there, the first one, is the only one of the original 4 Batman movies to not have Kenner-made toys, because they were made by Toy Biz. Now, if you saw my Lost World video, Toy Biz they had a brief run making RC products for the Lost World. I think they also had a few other lines. But the thing is, interestingly enough, they were the company that made almost every Marvel toy in the 90s before being bought out by Hasbro, who would become pretty much the permanent maker of Marvel toys. And their line of Marvel figures in the 90s was actually the inspiration behind the I reviewed last time. It's what the packaging was a throwback to. The only thing they didn't do is bring back the Toy Biz name. But yeah, after Toy Biz in '89, Kenner returned to Batman in 1990, and pretty much all the movies, the cartoon that came out, up until Kenner closed its doors in 2000 or so, 2001. And then I think around that time, Mattel picked up the... Oh, I said it, but I'm sorry. Nothing I can do. Picked up the rights to Batman and pretty much all DC figures. There have been DC Direct, which have been made by third-party companies those are not really. If they are action figures, they're ones made more for collectors than for these. I found on a shelf at Target, and they pretty much were meant to be kids' toys first. DC Direct figures are for display. They're pretty much articulated statues, or in some cases they are just statues, or they're like busts of the character torsos made out of polystyrene or even porcelain, much like an actual bust. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much every manufacturer of Batman toys as far back as there have been. The only interesting thing, one more interesting thing to note is, I think Mattel recently lost the rights to produce Batman toys, or even DC toys entirely. There is a Funko actually made some DC characters as part of their Savage World, which is basically the '80s He-Man meets DC heroes. Yeah, you look that up. It's like Funko Savage World figures. But they've also done for like slasher villain characters and even Street Fighter characters in that line. So, but the thing is, these are dated last year, but they're still on the shelves. So I'm not sure if these are just the last of the Mattel DC / Batman toys being made, or if they renewed the contract with DC. But I'm not entirely sure. This is also the DC logo from fairly recently, so again, these are fairly recent release. So what I have done is like last time, I've cut a hole in the bubble, because I actually do want to keep these cards. I'm not going to be throwing the cards out anymore. Excuse me while I prop this up. Hopefully it won't fall over. There we go. While I see if I can just quickly get these out. If I have to, that might, oh no, I ripped it a little, oh darn, come on, I ripped it. I don't keep it for collector value, so it doesn't. But it's more like I just want to keep it hanging around, almost like a display, if I can. I don't know. Like, I wanted to keep the cards from last week because they really look like cards from the '90s, and especially toys that are actually from that time period, like we saw with the Lost World figures, because you can't really find them anywhere. I don't know how collectible these cards, if at all, are going to be. Well, obviously not anymore. But I'm rambling. Sorry. Okay, so here we have the Dark Knight, and this is a very well detailed figure, and it's even got a felt cape. It'd probably be the only thing that would probably be better if it was vinyl plastic, but this is actually felt. So, like I said, that's a kind of a throwback to the earlier Batman toys, which had a mixture of fabric and plastic clothes. Same thing for the boy for Robin over here. These don't seem to be based on any specific iteration of these characters. I want to say this is either Tim Drake or... Yeah, this looks very much like the Tim Drake Robin. Damian Wayne has a very distinct face and stature. If you're familiar with him, you know who he is. But this looks distinctly like Tim Drake, right on down to having the style of Tim Drake's uniform when he was introduced. And for some reason, Robin came with a spear. Batman came with a shield. On the back of the card, it kind of shows why he'd have that. What about Robin? Oh, it's the same. But he is in the back, so I don't know. I mean, it probably would have been better to just have them come with like batarangs or a line, maybe like a grapple gun or what they usually use. And as for Batman himself, although it's a mixture of a lot of his different costumes, it looks distinctly like the Tim Burton-esque, except that it's more gray. Actually, yeah. somewhat like a mix between Tim Burton and the later animated series. But that logo, that version of the logo on his chest, I distinctly remember it more from. How does this go on? There's literally nothing, no instructions or anything to how this goes. So I assume it just snaps onto the arms like that. Anyway, it looks like it's from the more recent uh, iterations of the comics, the actual comics, done by Scott Snyder between 2011 and today. Yeah, Scott Snyder has written almost every major Batman storyline since 2011, the New 52 relaunch. So yeah, it doesn't really match either way on him, but eh, he's picked up a ninja sword and pretty much gone toe to toe with using it. The only thing he probably won't pick up is a gun, with some minor exceptions, but I don't have time. So just a quick, I think I'll talk about these comics real quick. This is just the first volume of Catwoman's run from the New 52, a somewhat infamous series, especially how the first issue ended, but that's neither here nor there. I don't want to talk about that. This is Batman Hush, a very popular storyline by Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee that actually became I think it was the latest release in the DC Universe animated series. And this is actually the first edition, because you can tell because it has the logo they used up until 2005, from the late 80s to 2005 up there. Now, the most interesting thing about this one is it was released around the time of the Batman v Superman movie, obviously meant to cash in on that name. And it's fine for what it is. It's basically a collection of all the times these two have fought over the years. But the thing is, if you pick this up, you're basically picking up samples of other books. It's like, this one in the back is from Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, and it's basically one chapter of that book, that you'd probably have to get, like, the other... you get the whole Dark Knight Returns stories, basically, instead of just this one chapter. I think only the Endgame Part 1 and 2 is the only technically complete storyline, but that was an event series that ran across almost every Batman title that was being published. And lastly, we have Arkham Scarecrow, which it goes all the way back to the Golden Age, like the 1940s and 50s, as you can tell by the ever-increasing artwork, up till the late 90s, the mid to late 90s, 2000s. Yeah, and it's got the 80s, the 70s, pretty much every major story that the Scarecrow had ever been involved in up until his creation. He's had cameos and appeared in other storylines, but this is like his first appearance, his origin, and pretty much any like major storyline throughout the decade that revolved around him or involved him. Yeah, and it ran up until... I think it goes up till 2011 when the New 52 Scarecrow was out. And that's comic history that I don't have time into. So that's it for this video. Thank you and enjoy. Oh, and one more thing. This is probably going to be my not my last video ever, but my last one for a while, because as I said, I make videos when I get new stuff to talk about, and yeah, this is all I had to unbox. I'm out of stuff for at least till next week, so hopefully I'll see you around.